Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel here, and today I have another Canada federal election forecast. Now, before I begin, I just want to put a disclaimer here. I don't 100% trust that the NDP is at 0 seats. The problem is, it's really hard to try to model what a party's seat retention is going to look like when they're losing 58% of voters, of their supporters. There's very likelihood that some of these MPs, maybe Belarus in Montreal or McPherson in Edmonton, or maybe some in Vancouver, like Vancouver East or something, might hold on. But absent better details, like high quality riding polls, it's really hard to try to forecast that. I'm not necessarily saying they're going to get 0, but math does say they're going to get 0 right now because it's basically impossible to project the seats for a party when they're losing 58% of their vote share. But before I begin, I want to shout out my channel members. I really appreciate the support you guys get the channel. And if you guys want to support the work I do here, by all means, go and link in the description below and press that join button. Otherwise, do your regular YouTube things, like, share, subscribe, comment below. Super thanks as well. Those exist. Those are great. But with that, let us begin. So, in the last few weeks, I've been speculating that Carney is going to peak sometime in late March. At the time of recording this, obviously it's April, so it's no longer late March. But we do have some data on this. So, I have been running the last 4 weeks the same projections with very high recency bias. So the difference between these and this map that I have here is these are very high recency bias, and I don't think these are as valid as 9-roll projections, but they do kind of tell you where trends are going. And you can see here, the Carney was gaining on the 17th, he was gaining on the 24th, and he was gaining on the 31st, but then he's lost ground since then. So he's peaked on March 31st. Update for my model, which is roughly where I said he was probably going to peak. So just saying. And it's not just vote share. You can see it with seats too. In fact, his seat total is now below this one because the Conservative vote share has increased. His lead has actually decreased. It was 5.7, or well, a little less than 5.7% lead here, to a little less than 5.8 here, and it's now only 4.5. Or well, a little less than 4.5. So just saying, Carney did peak. Now, does that mean that Carney is going to crash and burn? He's going to get 0 seats. Poilievre is going to win 343 seats. It's going to be a total rout, 100% of the vote to Poilievre. No, of course not. That's stupid. What this means that he's peaked is that the race is going to do one of 2 cases. It'll either enter a steady state, and in this steady state, there will be very little movement on average in the polls. Some polls will have Carney higher, some will have him lower, but the average will be relatively the same. Conversely, what's the word for this? It could mean that he's now on a downslope. I do think he's probably going to lose vote share because I think he's slightly overestimated right now because of the honeymoon period, which is going to be wearing off. It should be worn off by sometime between the next update or 2 updates from now. So the 14th or 21st, his honeymoon should be gone. Now, the trick here, since it's also mid-election, is things could happen. He could make proposals, he could do things, external events like Trump could occur, which boost Carney. So you kind of have a 2B option here, where he fades off his honeymoon, but he gains ground because of either geopolitical events or campaigning, like policy or the failures of, say, Poilievre or anyone else. Maybe the Singh and the NDP just collapse and Carney sucks up those voters. That could happen. And in that case, Carney could gain ground despite losing ground from Honeymoon, which could make it look like he's in a steady state, but he's actually having a flux of voters. He's losing certain voters, but regaining others at a similar rate. In a sense, that's, I think, kind of where Poilievre is right now. He's lost some voters, but he's gaining different voters at a comparable rate. So he's kind of flatlined the last 2 weeks. Sorry about that. My throat's a little sore today. Now, what does this mean going forward? Well, we're now really 3 weeks in the election, and you could say 4 weeks since Carney became prime minister. So we can kind of start assessing this. The campaign. The first video in this election, I said this is what the parties need to do. Second video, I was saying this is kind of what is going on and stuff like that, is where the paths are still. Now I'm going to give an update on how I think things are actually going for the parties. We're going to do the 3 parties. We'll do the 4 parties that matter. So we're not going to do Greens and people. So we'll start off with, obviously, the ones people care about, the Liberals and the Conservatives. So Carney's been doing a very good job monopolizing and running with the Trump stuff. But the risk that poses is if Trump, after his big April 2nd tariff thing, if that's the last time he does something, by the time the 28th rolls around, that might become a much less salient issue. If he just shuts up for a month, really. If Trump doesn't, though, then this is fine. Carney's fine on this portfolio. But the reason why this could be a risk for Carney is his campaigning is mediocre. And is anyone really surprised? He is a banker. He has very little political experience. His team around him is not very good, for the most part. He has some people who are better. I believe Butts is his campaign manager. Butts is very good at campaign management. But a lot of his advisors and a lot of his senior MPs are not very competent people. A lot of the best people of the Trudeau government have left Parliament or left the PMO's office in the last 4 years. 6 years, if you want to start counting Butts. Some of them have come back for Carney, and that's a good asset for Carney. But a lot of them haven't. A lot of the advertising and a lot of the campaigning has been generic or weak. Now, compared to some people on this list, it makes Carney look very good. But in an objective sense, his campaigning is very mediocre. His rallies are okay. Nothing to write home about. And he doesn't seem to have the public speaking charisma to really carry some of these things. He's really riding on that cool, calm, stern demeanor he has. And if he can cash that into the bank, he does win. But if you start seeing the international situation calm down, or Carney makes a big mistake somewhere along the line, say in the debate perhaps, that will change. The debates are a very big, high-risk scenario. I don't think anyone should say the election is over until the debates have done, and a couple of polls have come out since then. It could very well be the case that Carney does fine in the debate. And if he does fine, he could very well easily win. But the risk is if he has a bad performance. And to give you an example of what I mean by bad performance. So let's say his performance is as bad as Biden's was in June 2024. Then his campaign is dead. He's going to get destroyed. But Carney's probably not that bad. So the worst case scenario is very unlikely that he just completely eats it in the debate. But that doesn't mean he can't do bad in the debate. And that is a risk because he doesn't have good public speaking chops. He doesn't have good on the feet thinking chops. He doesn't handle criticism very well. These are not important considerations if he's in control. But in the French debate, he's going to have Poilievre and Blanchette, who both fluently speak French, and Carney's French is not very good. And that will put him on the defense. In the English debate, Carney has a chance to try to go on the offense, and that could salvage a lot of the stuff, because, I mean, obviously 75% of the country, for the most part, speaks English. So that is the more important debate for Carney to win. If Carney ends up losing some of these Montreal suburb seats and some of these ones on the outskirts, etc., like Trois-Rivières or ones in Quebec City, he could lose like 6 seats easily in Quebec and still win a majority. And realistically, even if he only has like 171 seats, it's very unlikely that Blanchette will prop up a Poilievre minority government. It's possible, don't get me wrong, it could happen, but it seems unlikely. I think it's more likely Blanchette will just abstain from voting for confidence, which will mean Carney becomes a minority prime minister for probably 18 to 24 months. So overall, I would rate his campaign as a C+. He's doing what he needs to be doing, but he's not innovating. He's not trying to take the position in front. He's kind of coasting as the front runner, and that could work. Because I will note here, just because you're the front runner doesn't mean active campaigning cannot hurt you. You can hurt yourself if you do the wrong thing. So what Carney's doing is the safe play. A very mild-mannered, very unambitious campaign, except versus Trump. If that changes, though, all dice are off. Poilievre, on the other hand, is trying to thread a very tricky battle. The tricky battle is he has to try and attack the Liberal government while also attacking Trump at the same time. And that might seem obvious how you do that to your brain, but it doesn't matter if it's obvious to you. It has to play across to the median voter. And the median voter isn't going to spend a lot of time thinking about something like this. They're going to see the messaging and take it at first value, because most voters are not watching podcasts like this. They're not consuming content like this. They will talk to a canvasser at the door, maybe. They will read platforms, maybe. Watch some news segments, perhaps. But that's it. A lot of people do not engage with elections to a very, very high degree. They engage way more than they do between elections, but it's still not the highest degree possible. And that means Poilievre's messaging has to work on both fronts. Now, the wrinkle with this is I've seen a lot of conservative ads and conservative affiliates attacking Carney in a very unproductive and useless way. Nick Cuvelis actually talked about this recently on Twitter, and basically saying that he was saying his data was showing that the Nick Cuvelis is the CEO of Campaign Research, for those not familiar. Cuvelis was saying that his polling was showing that Poilievre trying to link Carney to Trudeau didn't work, and in fact was worse than useless. It actually hurt Poilievre. And it's a very classic reason why. I've said this many times on this channel. I've said this many times in many places. Slander ads don't work. And some people take offense to this, their objection to my terminology here. I'll explain it once again to ward off some of this. A slander ad is an ad that only serves to character assassinate somebody. It may or may not be true. It may or may not be in good faith. But at the end of the day, And the only purpose that ad does is to tell someone watching it that this person is bad. So the Conservatives attacking Carney and saying he's just like Trudeau or whatever. That's a slander ad. They are just trying to character assassinate Carney because there's no other way to read that. That attack is just at Carney the person. Now, if you compare that to, say, the attack about him moving stuff like the Brookfield HQ to New York, that's a different style of attack. It is attacking Carney, but it's attacking his judgment, his choices. Whereas saying he's just like Trudeau is just saying he's a bad person. Whereas the Brookfield one is saying he makes bad decisions. That seems like a subtle difference, perhaps, but it's a very important distinction. And the Conservatives have leant really hard, I've found recently, into this line, and it doesn't work. Now, Poilievre himself doesn't do this very much. And his rallies and his messaging, he's much more focused on the core stuff of the platform, of his platform. But a lot of affiliates and surrogates do this. And that still hurts the party brand. It doesn't matter who said a thing. All that matters is that it was said and people associate it with the Conservatives. Now, I will put another caveat on that. Provincial politicians probably don't matter. If someone's saying, oh, Smith said this, that probably doesn't matter. Most people probably don't care what Smith said or did. Now, with that said, the Conservative campaign, even with some of these flaws, is starting to have some semblance of a coherent plan to victory here. They are slowly honing in on what they need to do, which is basically the line that we are vulnerable to Trump because the Liberals screwed up. And it's a narrow path to run. They have to lean just negative enough into Trump that it doesn't alienate swing voters, but they can't go too hard because then it will alienate a lot of the core conservative base, about 25% based on polling like Trump. So they can't lean too hard into it, but they can't be too soft. They can't lean too hard into the Liberals, and they can't lean too soft for the same reason, but opposite. So it's a narrow path, and it's a tricky path, but it does seem to be being threaded. I think there is a good chance that the election will be closer, and Poilievre could in fact win. I would not discount it at this stage. Especially because I do very strongly think the Atlantic Canada polls are wrong. I'll just bring this up here, and I'll go back to my actual modeling. So my modeling has the Liberals with a 20-point lead in Atlantic Canada. And that's because a lot of polls have 20, 30-point leads for the Liberals. I don't think that's happening. And here's why. This is an addendum to the Conservative side. I don't think the NDP are actually at 6% in Atlantic Canada. If we assume how they're doing in the rest of Canada, at Western Canada, is comparable, I think the NDP should very well actually be quite higher. Not like dramatically so, but 1 or 2 points higher. Similar story, the Greens are probably higher. Maybe 1 whole point higher. And if you remove those 3 points, again, the race becomes a lot closer in Atlantic Canada. But the big thing is, I think the Conservatives are being underestimated. And I think this is also true for the most part in the raw polling in the prairies. Though my model is much better at modeling this for the prairies. It's hard to do this in Atlantic Canada because I think this is a new phenomenon. So I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure. Sorry about that. If we go zoom into, say, Nova Scotia here, I'm pretty confident in saying I think the South Shore, Cumberland, Colchester, the Eastern Shore, kind of stuff like this, is going to be almost as blue as places in rural Alberta. or rural Saskatchewan. I think you're going to see places like Shelburne and Queens and Yarmouth and Digby. Those counties, they could easily be 70% conservative. I think you're going to see places like Cumberland, even places like Colchester, be 50, 60, 70%. Places like Richmond, Cape Breton, could be very well be 50, 60%. And the reason for this, why I suspect this, is first off, I have internal data which I will leave there. But second, I'm from the area. I live in Nova Scotia. I see what's going on in these areas. It doesn't seem to me to be the case that Nova Scotia is this red. And I suspect because of who's switching, it's also going to be missed in places like New Brunswick, PEI, Newfoundland. So I think there very well is going to be a situation where the Conservatives do better in Atlantic than forecasted. Now, that won't change the election if it's like this. If Central Nova, Kings Hants, Malpeque, Cape Breton, Canso, Antigonish, Long Range Mountains, Notre Dame, those ridings flip at 7. Carney still wins a majority. But that does change a lot of math here. So that is one thing I do want to emphasize here. Now, moving on to the NDP. The NDP campaign is abysmal. It's horrifying. It's one of the worst campaigns I've ever seen a party do. I don't think they're going to even meet the candidate numbers. I think they're at like 270 or something. Last I checked. And they need 343, so they're going to probably not be anywhere close to a full slate, it looks like. They have no money. They're running a terrible air campaign. And Singh is worn out and tired. He wasn't good to begin with, but one of the few people in political history who the more experience they have, the worse they do. Singh in 2019 did way better than he is now. He wasn't even good in 2019. That's why the party did so bad in that election. And now they might lose all their seats. Now they might keep a handful because of the difficulties of modeling this kind of collapse. But they're doing a terrible job. And they're doing a terrible job for all the reasons I've said every single time I've ever talked about the NDP on this channel. And it bothers me to no end that no matter how many times I say this, no one in that party listens. Like, I realize most people are aware of my political preferences. I realize most people probably don't think I'm being in good faith when I give recommendations to the NDP, but I am. Trust me, I am, because it bothers me so much. But what does Singh do in this campaign? Well, he doubles down on all of the things killing the NDP. His economics platform is basically indistinguishable from the Liberals, when he even says things. He's losing union endorsements to the Conservatives. Like, that's embarrassing. You shouldn't be doing that as the NDP. That's just pathetic. And he's running with deeply socially liberal people. Now, they are now been fired, from my understanding. But for a while, he was running around with an influencer who just so happens to have been an OnlyFans model. How you miss that kind of correlation, I don't understand. Newsflash, NDPers. The really progressive social liberal types are very happy to vote liberal. They're voting liberal currently. They're not voting for the NDP. Especially not at 7.3%. They probably were never going to vote for the NDP. Chasing after them is insane. They're not going to vote for you. They're going to vote for the Liberals. Because the Liberals do everything they want, but also win elections. So just why would they vote for you? A party, especially in first past the post, cannot exist unless it has a client group that it is serving specifically. The NDP does not serve anyone right now. I think, in the grand scheme of things, if Singh decided that he should give me control of his air campaign, I could probably do better than this. By a lot. Maybe even double this vote share, maybe. Now, 3 weeks would not be enough time, to be honest. But I could probably save furniture. Because it's not hard. This is an easy campaign for the NDP. All they need to do is attack Trump and then say, look, all our union jobs are under threat, and the Liberals and the Conservatives don't want to do anything about this. We're going to do X, Y, and Z to defend manufacturing jobs. We're going to fight the U.S. We're going to stop them from being able to torpedo us at a moment's notice. And boom, you're at like 10%, 12% for the NDP. But no, Singh's campaigning with OnlyFans models. Got to do that. It's just pathetic. It's really pathetic. And now, we'll swing to the block. Blanchette's coasting right now. Now, this could be part of my media biases because I do not speak or read very good French. I read a little bit, I speak a little bit, but not very good. So I might have missed things Blanchette is doing. Comment below if I did. But for now, it seems like he's coasting. He's doing ground game. He's doing Quebec-focused advertising. But it really does look like he's going to double down on the debate. And hope he can get another good moment like 2019, like 2021 in the debates to really pull ahead. Blanchette is a good debater. Even in his second language, he's a good debater. Most people are bad debaters in their first language. So that is a very good, albeit risky strategy from the Bloc Québécois. Because it can be very difficult, especially in this geopolitical climate, for that party to really force itself. It has to convince Quebecers that it is the party that's best representing them. But if they're too scared about trade war with Trump, that's a hard thing to sell. So there is some play here. And it's a bit tricky, though, because waiting that long, there might not be this rally. It might not happen. But we'll see. There's not much more to say about the Bloc, because, again, they're not being very aggressive. I'm reminded you before I finish off here, because my voice is really sore, so I don't want to keep going. It's not going to be a full-length video. But before I go off here, I just want to touch on Kitchener Center here. That's going conservative by, probably a math fluke, but also because the Greens are doing awful, right? The Greens are at 1.2% in Ontario now. If we go back to, January, they were at 3.2. They've lost almost 66% of their vote share in Ontario. The Conservatives are roughly where they are, and the Liberals have gained a bunch. So you're in a really silly situation where the Conservatives are winning with 30% of the vote. So it's probably just a math fluke, but people were complaining in the last video. I'm just going to head off that one. That's what's happening in that riding. It's kind of fluky. And if you want to complain about any other NDP ridings, go ahead if you want. But the end of the story is, again, a party loses 58% of their vote share. It's pretty hard to model them, especially when the Liberals gain 33% and the Conservatives also gain 25% of their vote share. So two parties gain a lot of vote share and one crashes. It's hard to model that. Well, that. I'm going to bid you guys adieu, and I'll see you next week with something else.